Welcome, everybody. I see Aaron, my good friend up in the Northeast, Miss Melissa, Elaine. She's typing, therefore she's alive. Not necessarily. I've never seen somebody dead type, but yeah, I think we can run on autopilot sometimes, right? And type, even though we're not really there. All right, lots of people jumping in. Good. Miss LaDonna, my dear friend in Chicago. Hi, LaDonna. I love you. I'm so glad you're here with me, at least virtually. It makes me feel good knowing I got some friends. Jason, here as well. Super high energy. Awesome. All right, you all. So I'm going to get started real quick here. I'm going to hop back and forth between a basic PDF. So I don't have a lot of visuals. This is going to be a little different than most virtual presentations or webinars, and that I'm going to do most of this direct to camera and just talk to you and share from my experience, intellect, and heart, as I try to often do. So they'll be a little different than most webinars that you usually get involved in. So hop back over here to the first page of the PDF. I created this, by the way, in Keynote. PowerPoint would have worked too, and then I exported as a PDF to keep things simple. I want to focus on you and make sure I connect with you and that we don't worry too much about the actual technology. So there's enough going on with technology as it is. That's a little, and maybe the first hidden lesson there with speaking in general. Let's focus on the audience and why we're there and what we're going to deliver. So today's virtual presentation is 9 essentials to be a killer conference speaker. How to stand out from the crowd, connect, and impact your audience in the next 59 minutes. I hope to share with you essential ideas that are not things you're going to hear every day, things you may not have heard before, something you're definitely not going to typically hear in your average introduction to speaking or presentation class. And I'll explain why and where a lot of these ideas came from and exactly how they're going to impact you and help you. So let's move right along here. First thing I want to talk about is why would you even want to, first, most of you I would assume are interested or are already speaking at a conference. So you probably already realize that this is important or you wouldn't do it. What I want to encourage you and inspire you to do is to step beyond wherever your skill set is and to stretch your skills. What I know from my own journey is that it's worth it. That's the most important question I think we need to ask. Why put energy into trying to become a better speaker? Because it's worth it. So first of all, I know you want to stand out as being one of the best conference speakers that are there because you're bringing value to people. I know it could also be a fear that it can be embarrassing if people think that your presentation wasn't good. There's some nasty little comments that can be very discouraging and disheartening. I've been there. Believe me, I've been in tears over little comments. I could have 300 people in the room think it's amazing, and then the one person that doesn't like it, it bothers me for years. So I get it. I really do. So that's a piece. I want you to have more confidence and to know that you're doing everything you can to be exceptional at what you do. And then also, here's the interesting thing, especially for me, and what I promise for you is if you continue to develop your speaking skills, it will show up everywhere in your life, whether you're doing a meeting with someone, whether you're sitting across the table in a one-on-one with your boss, you're probably going to end up getting more raises, promotions, having more influence in your organization. It's true. I've saw it myself because I really got serious about my speaking skills when I was still in the full-time world of technology and business. And then I started seeing results across the board. So huge, huge advantage for you. And that's the thing, I think that's interesting. The good news is that the bar has been set very low. Unfortunately, and most people don't take it serious. They're very uncomfortable and they won't invest the time in becoming better at what they do. So there's some reasons I want you to think about why it's important for you. And this is a huge opportunity for you to really step out there and be exceptional at what you do. So I want to give you a little bit about why me. So there's 3 numbers here on the screen right now. These 3 numbers, top number is since I went full-time. I started speaking in 95, was my first paid speaking engagement. I did about 4 or 5 speaking engagements on average from 95 till about 2001. And then I ended in the corporate world in 2001 and started doing more speaking and various training, development, leadership. When I decided to go full-time, it was 2010. And starting in 2011 through today, the total, and actually 5 or 6 year period, it's actually a 6-year period. The total I've spent on my personal speaking skills development is $54,534. I know it's a ridiculous number. Some of you may be wondering, like, come on, dude, that's ridiculous. I don't expect you to spend that kind of money. I just want you to know that I've worked with some of the very, very best people in the world to learn exactly the craft and the art. And I'm obsessive about this skill set. I approach it like Tom Brady or your favorite quarterback or your favorite pitcher would. I think of it like that. I mean, every single day I'm trying to spend a very focused energy on becoming as good as I possibly can. The ideas I'm going to share with you today come from that experience and that knowledge, and they're not, most of it I don't think you'll typically have heard. So the second number, the 1,000 there, is the number of hours on average, at least, I spend just working on that skill set. It's actually way over 1,000 per hour per year, but I wanted to be conservative in that and let you know that I'm serious about it and that it's worth you tuning in and taking action on the ideas I share with you. The 2,000 number at the bottom is the number of hours I have been in front of audiences and done presentations since I went full-time, not even including the years before that. So over 2,000 hours of doing it. So, and who cares if I'm not any good at it, right? That's the real question. Some of you have seen me, so you know that I have some skills there. Others of you may not know who I am, but typically I'm in the top 1% of evaluations. I say that only because I want you to be there with me. It's not that hard. It's just being focused and intentional about how you go about this. So we're going to dive right in with some more the tactical content. Let me hop back to the screen here and show you the first. Let's tackle this first piece, and I think maybe the most essential thing we talk about is overcoming whatever fear you might have related to speaking. I get the question, a lot of people say, hey, do you have any fears? You must not be fearful, right? You do it professionally. I assume you don't have any fear with speaking. The truth is, for me, I don't get freaked out anymore. But if the variables are shifted a lot, like if it's a different audience or a bigger audience or a different room, or like the AV's jacked up in the morning, I don't know, you know how it is, like your day's off the wall, you get a weird email from your loved one or something. It's just any little thing can throw you off. And in those situations, I do find myself anxious and I get heart rate up and I can feel it coming. Here's what I want to share with you. The reason why I believe most people fear speaking at some level, or at some point you're going to have some anxiety, is our ego. This is good news and bad news, okay? This was an aha moment I discovered about 2 years ago. Our ego wants to believe people are talking about us. And it wants to think that people are talking and thinking about what we did well, ideally. But here was the aha moment, is the ego is also equally satisfied to think that people are talking bad about you, right? So if you screw up, your ego is just as well satisfied. Think, well, at least I'm getting the attention it needs. It's the same thing that happens when a child acts out. You might see that a child will act out in behavior in a classroom, as an example, when you're young, to get attention, just as well as a child that might be the goody two-shoe. They're both driving for the same reason. They want attention. So that's liberating. But here's the problem with this aha moment I had. This means that when you speak at the next conference, maybe it's the ICMI or the HDI conference coming up, when you speak at that conference, if you do really well, and I'm sure you will, I believe in it and believe in you, and I know you'll do well, or if you screw something up, let's say you flub a line, or you say something stupid, or you have a problem with you forget to say something, you're going to want to believe, your ego is going to try to trick you into thinking that for the rest of the conference, the rest of the day, that people are talking about you. And they're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe Jason, skipped this line. I can't believe that Eddie, his slides bombed out, that they blue screened. Here's the truth. We're all caught up in our own crap. And as soon as they might see it. First of all, they're rooting for you. They don't want you to fail. They're rooting for you. And they might notice the mess up. But the truth is, as soon as they're out of that session, they're on to their own stuff. We're all worried about our own business, our own crap, how we look in the hallway, if the shirt is impressing people, if that person thought they were cute, what am I going to get for lunch? Is the email server up at work? I mean, we've got all this stuff. People are busy. So that's the good news and the bad news, is that once you go out of there and you're done, most of the time you're largely forgotten as far as exactly what you did. People are going to only remember how you made them feel. That's critically important. We're going to come back to that. They're going to remember how you made them feel. Did they feel like you cared about them, that you were compelling, that you had value to offer, that you showed up for them? That's what they'll remember. And they'll probably remember some of your content if you're lucky, and you present it in a compelling way. So that was a huge aha. I just want you to remember that people are really not going to worry one way or the other, and they're not going to be talking about you, even if you screw it up. So when your mind and your ego starts to try to tell you to, worry about that, just say, you know what, I'm here to serve. Redirect towards serving the audience. We'll come back to that as well. I hope that it frees you up as much as it has me. Just because I had the aha moment doesn't mean it doesn't come back to haunt me. I have to remind myself continually that that's the real truth. So I hope that is helpful for you, that really people are focused on themselves and they're not going to be thinking about you much after you make your flub and you have your successful speaking next presentation. So I want you to also, here's just a takeaway, as it says on the slide here. What is your biggest speaking related fear? I would encourage you to write that down right now and to get some clarity on exactly what is your speaking fear. What is that speaking fear for you? So just checking real quick, making sure I saw somebody say they couldn't hear. Are we good to, everybody good to go now? Let's see. Chat back. So let me know somebody. I hope you can hear me, audio wise. Give me a confirmation there just to make sure. I want to double check that we're good to go there. So let me just double check. Oh, okay. LaDon said it was I was earlier. Okay. All right. I think we're good to go then. All right. So. Cool, great. Everybody said sounds good. Okay, excellent. Just a little freaking out a little bit there. Tech friends, got to make sure people can hear us. Okay, so biggest speaking related fear. I want you to write it down and get some clarity on that. And then we're going to jump right into this next slide for you. So this is going to be tactical right away. So here's what I want you to do. This is the most important question that I ask people when I'm coaching anybody, whether it's a conference speaker, executive, salesperson, whatever it is, any situation where they have a really important presentation. The first question and the one question I want you to focus on that's going to drive every decision you make before, during, and after your presentation is based on what I call the KFD. Here's the question to ask yourself. What do I want my audience to know, feel, or do as a result of experiencing my presentation? What do I want them to know, feel, or do? So we'll talk about specifically the know. Exactly what do you want them to know? This is primarily focused on, of course, content. What is the specific content that you want them to be aware of? That's going to be facts, figures, perhaps a bit about your background, but really, I don't really want you to talk about that too much unless it's specifically relevant to the message you're delivering, because they can figure that out in the bio. But really, what's the content, okay? And getting crystal clarity. Here's the 3 things I want them to know and exactly what to do when they walk out. The next one is critically important, is the feel. What do you want them to feel as a result of being in your presentation? What do you want them to feel? So how do you want them to feel when they walk out? Do you want them to feel hopeful? Do you want them to feel inspired? I think this is a critically important piece of the conversation that most presenters leave out. How critically important is it that for you to focus on exactly how you want the person to feel? The emotional component is critical. So you want them to feel hopeful and so on. So do you want them to know that this doesn't have to be as complex, whatever you're trying to share with them, or here they can be very simple, and inspire them to take action on it? That's critical. If it was just the information that everyone needed, we'd already have the solution. There's Google out there, there's YouTube. Your job is critical while you're in there is to have them feel inspired and hopeful that they can go back and make a difference. So you need to do that in your own sincere way, but that is critical. Get clarity on that and write exactly down how you want them to feel when they walk out. Then the D, let's talk about the D real quick. The D is specifically what do you want them to do? What's the exact one step, not 5 things. I've tried that, it's too confusing. What's the one next action step you want them to do when they walk out or get back to work? Be very clear about that. And that's something you typically would deliver towards the end of your presentation, or maybe at the very end or right before the end. Here's exactly what I want you to do next. Go try this. Go take these steps. Review this, review your notes, meet with this person and share this information. Take this to your team. What exactly do you want them to do next when they walk out? That is critical. The next thing you want to do is, after you get crystal clear clarity on these 3 items, is to continue to go back to this when you're trying to evaluate, should I include this story? Should I include this content? Is this slide relevant? Continue to go back to your KFD and ask yourself, does this piece of content, story, whatever this anchor is, maybe it's a chart, maybe it's a particular metaphor or whatever you're sharing, does it help forward one of these 3? Does it help them know what you want them to know, feel the way you want them to feel, and does it help them know exactly what to do when they walk out? So that's how I scrub my presentation against the KFD continually through the development process, all the way up to those last minute moments when you know, the morning before, you're like, oh, I'll add this in, or maybe I'll say this. Always go back to your KFD. Okay, how about we hop on to the next one? This is what not to say first. What a lot of people do, and it's a natural thing, of course, for us to walk into a room of people and to greet them and to do the niceties. You know, hey, thanks, I'm glad you're here. I'm grateful that you showed up in my room. That's a really important thing to do, by the way, and I try to always do that, but don't do that first. Don't talk about the weather. Don't go into your bio. Here's the most powerful thing you can do, and if you watch professional full-time speakers, you'll notice that the best speakers do this. When they come out, think about, like, look at your keynotes. When they come out, the keynoters come out there, boom, they go right into a story or share a compelling fact, ask a powerful question, something that grabs and engages the audience immediately. So just be different. That's one of the things, is just, you don't have to do it the way everybody else does it. And maybe you've been taught that, you know, to say, thanks, glad you're here, you know, make a joke, or street jokes especially. No street jokes, okay? Unless you're a comedian and you're good at it, no street jokes, okay? Risky, weird. It just doesn't typically work, especially if it's a canned joke, not funny. You can make some situational humor or make a little joke about yourself, make fun of yourself perhaps quickly, but be careful there. So don't make a canned joke. Don't start talking about your credentials and all that. Grab them with something interesting. At the very least, you can go right into what they're going to get. Hey, in the next 60 minutes, you're going to get 9 essentials to be an incredible conference speaker. Boom, here we go. And they're going to be psyched. They're like, well, here we are. We're getting value right away. They're engaged. So don't just start with the niceties. Skip all that stuff and do thank them for being there. Maybe a third of the way in or towards the end of the presentation. Next, let's talk about the number one mistake that even professional speakers make at the end of their presentation. We're going to hop to the end. This is another quick tip that's going to be really simple, but most people won't do this. So I'll tell you not only what to do, why it's important, and exactly how to do it, because this is going to be a complete mold break from what you're used to, especially in conference presentations. So here it is. Don't end with Q&A. Don't end with Q&A. Never, okay? I've had one client who was a presenter for the Congress, actually. He was in front of the FAA, and he had to present to the FAA and influence the FAA to change their laws on materials they allowed in use of commercial aircraft. So big deal, right? And he said, Manley, I can't change the way the FAA and Congress does their thing. I testify on the panel, then they ask questions. That's how it goes. He's the only client I've ever let off the hook, right? That's the one exception. So unless you're testifying for Congress or court of law or something, no Q&A at the end. Here's why. There's a bunch of reasons, okay? But here's the main reasons. First of all, when you do question and answer at the end, you're just throwing out who knows what's going to happen. I mean, most of you who've done conferences before know it can go really well. You could get hit with a question that's like way in left field that doesn't have, you're like, where did that come from? It has nothing to do with what you presented about. And it changes the energy up. It can go really well. I'm not saying don't do question and answer, but don't do it at the end. The end is one of the most important parts of the entire presentation. And people remember most what you say last. So those are sacred moments. You want to be the person who speaks last. This is your presentation. You're there as an expert. Someone has decided to put you in front of that audience. So use that and serve the audience with exactly, remember, the KFD, what do you want them to know? Maybe you do a quick summary. How do you want them to feel that you care, that they can go out and do this, that you're there for them, and exactly what you want them to do next. There's a lot of important things you need to do at the end, not question and answer. Okay, so that's why. Now let's talk about how, because this is way different than people expected, way off the charts, right? Nobody does this at conferences. So that'll help you stand out in and of itself. It's very important that you let them know that you're going to do questions, but that's not the end of the presentation. So what I typically say, you can steal this line. I say, okay, everyone, I actually have one more critically important lesson or question that I'm going to share with you before we go. But before we close, I want to see if there are any questions that you might have. So what questions do you have, right? And then I run around the room and try to engage people in a personal way. Another little tip, you don't have to do that. But most of these conferences, you're wired up wirelessly. So get out there and shake the hands and say their name back to them. It's very powerful. It builds a great connection in the room. And those of you who see me do this. It's for a reason. I love people too, so that helps. But people love it. And it's their little moment to feel recognized and repeat back their question to the room. If it's in line with the content. If the question is a little weird or it's like off topic or something, you don't have to repeat it back. Sometimes I will not repeat it back and say, okay, I'm going to connect with you later. And I think to answer that question effectively, I want to take that one offline. That's another little tip. I didn't plan on telling you this, but what you can also do is, so tell them you're going to do questions now. You have more to come, and you got to sell this. Because often what people do is when they hear questions coming, they think, oh, that's the end of the conference presentation. So people start packing up. So you have to let them know that it's not the end. I'm going to do questions now. I've got something else that you definitely want to hear. What I often will also do is say, by the way, if a question comes up that I feel like to serve you best, I might need to go more in depth or ask you more questions to serve you best and the room. Would it be okay if I defer potential questions offline? And I'm committed to answering them to you after the session is over. This gives you an out if it's a weird question or if it truly does need additional conversation, or maybe you don't know. And I also tell people that, I think a lot of comments I have, people say, I love that you're authentic and you don't try to BS people. To say, hey, I might not know the answer, right? So if I don't, I'll tell you and we'll take it offline. So you need some outs. You set that up and you set up that you're going to do questions now. So Q&A is very important, especially in conference sessions. I just think it can be much more powerful when you do it not early, but before the close. And then you can go into your close, right? So good tip, will immediately separate you from the pack. So try that at your next presentation. I promise you it'll make a difference. Okay, number one mistake, even professionals I see do that, and it's not the best way to do it. And then let's jump into the next one. So the one part of your presentation you absolutely must have wired. I'm going to tell you what it is and why this is critically important for you and for your audience, okay? So here, the one part you must have wired, and when I say wired, I mean, I actually want you to have it scripted. A couple sentences there. I want you to know exactly what you're going to say when you step up in front of that audience. It's ideally the first 5 minutes. And I'm going to talk later about what we focus most on as far as when you don't have enough time to rehearse, what do you need to be focused most on? I will talk to you about that. And you're going to heavily emphasize that opening. So that's critically important. Why is that so important? There's a number of reasons the opening is critical. First of all, first impressions, right? People make up their mind. There's about, it's in 30 seconds, it's crazy. First 7 seconds or so, they decide if they even like you. They make these quick subconscious judgments about, is this going to be worthwhile? Do I like this person? Are they cocky? Do they seem to care? That happens very quickly. Okay, there's this rapport that, and they decide if they're going to just really tune in the next 23 seconds. They decide, am I going to listen? Is this really worthwhile? Am I zoning in or out? So the first 30 seconds especially are critically important. That's why you don't need to be going on about the weather and telling silly jokes and all that stuff. So get into something powerful immediately, okay? right away, and have that wired. That's number one. That why is for the audience. It serves them better for you to jump right in, and for you to have it wired super tight. Know exactly. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to. If you screw up and drop a word, they don't know. That's okay. But know what you're going to do first, especially those first few sentences. The second reason this is critically important is for you. The more confident you feel, because even for me, it's a little. Even if I don't feel, nervous per se, those first few minutes, it's a little bit. It's startup, right? You're starting the engine and getting things going. That's can be not, even if you're not nervous, it can just not be as smooth. You're not in your groove yet. So the more you have that tight and wired, and you know exactly what you're going to say first, then the smoother and faster you're going to get into your groove and relax, and your heart rate's going to drop down. You're going to start connecting and get really into the content and connected with the room. So wire your opening, critical. We'll talk about what to practice first and most as well later. That's going to come up again. But for now, definitely focus on your opening and know exactly what you're going to do first. Again, great things to do first. Open it with a compelling question, a great story, a shocking fact that people would not expect. Something like that is the most powerful three of the multiple options that I teach people. That's the three top ones that are going to be really, really powerful. Next, the most neglected part of presentations that screws up. Not great grammar there. I'm from Kentucky. Sorry about that, folks. The most neglected part of presentations that screws up works. Be transparent, by the way. If you screw up, call yourself out, right? I'm having fun. And I don't know, grammar's not my strength, but here we go. Even the best speakers don't really focus on this. Many great speakers kind of miss this point. It's transitions. Transitions are a part that really get overlooked. Again, I'm going to tell you why that's important and then what to do about it. Transitions are often, and maybe you've had this, those of you who've spoken in front of audiences before, you'll notice that this is a spot where you'll often get hung up. That is, you'll finish one little segment, maybe it's your intro. So you do your intro and then you're like, what's my anchor for my first part, my first point? Oh yeah, okay. And I want you to focus on the transitions. Once you got your opening wired up and you know what you're going to close with, especially when we get into rehearsal, how do you get from A to B and B to C and C to D and so on? And there's a lot of little techniques you can use there. I'm not going to go into all that, but just be aware of how you're going to do that. It could be as simple as, okay, now that we've covered that, next is critically important as well. So I want to build and hook them in to listen up again. You definitely want to pick up point 3 here. This is critical. So they're going to listen up again. It's almost like a chance to restart the presentation and reopen. So you can think of it like that. And make sure you have an idea of the phrase. You don't have to have it super wired tight, but have an idea of what you're going to say to get from point A to B and B to C and C to D. I bet, and let me in chat real quick. Those of you who have had a presentation in front of an audience, chat me up here and let me know if you've ever had this happen. You've been in a presentation live and somewhere in the middle there, you're like in the middle of point 3 and you're trying to go to point 4, but you don't remember maybe what the point was, or I don't know, the slides are out of whack, but you've gotten a little wonky. Who's had that happen? Who's gotten a little off track in those transitions and it feels a little uncomfortable and maybe you disconnect a bit from the audience? Let me know if you've seen that happen. Let's see what it is. Everybody says, yeah. Got several people. So I got a couple questions. So I'm going to go back and hit those questions in a second. I'll go back and I'm going to read those in a little. I'll do questions towards the end, but not at the end, of course. So yes, I'm getting a lot of yeses. Absolutely. Edward, Dave, Diane, Mary, Elaine, Jan, Randy, Jeffrey, Melissa, all a bunch of people said absolutely. I've had this where I get lost in transitions. So focus on your transitions more maybe than you have in the past. And I usually write them out. That's one of the few things will write out physically. I'll write out a physical, basic, high-level outline. I don't use notes typically, but I often don't even look at the outline. But another tip I didn't plan on sharing, but in that 24 hours right before I present, I'll physically write out often the outline, including how I transition. I usually put that out to the right of the points. So yes, transitions are critically important. Love it. So Georgia said, I can really only do a good presentation if I know exactly how I want to transition. I can speak freely about the points on my slides, but I I have to know my transition to speak with confidence. Absolutely. I totally agree. So love it. Oxygen. Oxygen's important too. Yes. Yes. So remember to breathe. Jason said, remember to breathe. I totally agree. Yeah, that's a whole nother, we'll maybe talk about that in a few minutes if we have time. So yeah, focus on the transitions. And if you haven't already in the past, I had one of my mentors that I invested a lot of money in, really taught me to focus on that. It's made a big difference. So don't neglect your transitions. Okay, we're going to dive into related to breathing. Jason said, remember to breathe. I'm going to talk about a couple different things here that are pre-game rituals and mindsets that will help you. And this also is related to the essential bullet point I had in the email, in the copy, trying to encourage you to sign up today, was that what do I focus on when I don't have enough time? Now, let me know in a comment. We'll see, this probably won't be a lot of comments, but let me know if you've ever had a presentation where you had all the time you wanted and you were able to, who's had all the time you ever wanted to make, to rehearse the presentation, and you got in front of all the right people and you knew it as well as you wanted to, and everything was perfect. Let me know if anybody's ever had that situation. I do this for a living. If I don't speak well and I don't get spin off business from people in the room and serve more people, whether they're salespeople or IT or leadership or whatever it is, I don't feed my family. So I got to be good at it. This is critical. And I have never had a presentation where I felt like I was 100% perfectly rehearsed. I feel like I always need more time. I don't know about you all. So let me know if that's chatted up. Has anybody ever just had all the time they needed? I don't see anybody yet. So yeah, we're all in it together. So here's how I focused my specific rehearsals, and where I spend an inordinate amount of time over doing full presentation rehearsals, which are important, but I definitely 80-20. I know most of you are probably aware of 80-20 principle. I focus 80% of my effort in these 4 areas. Number 1, as I alluded to earlier directly, we talked about your opening is your first priority. Know exactly how you're going to open and have that wired and rehearse that out loud. The more you rehearse, the more you rock, period. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's not fun, but you have to rehearse if you want to be amazing. So that's it. You don't have to, but if you want to be great, if you want to stand out, if you want to, be recognized as an expert, get paid more at work, influence people, boss, and so on, you need to rehearse. Even if it's a conversation with your boss, know how you're going to open. What you're going to say first. Secondly, your closing is a close second, okay? Especially your call to action. That's that fill in the blank there on number 2. Your closing is a close second. Exactly what are you going to say last? What's the last thing you're going to share? Focus on those 5 minutes. Focus on the first 5 minutes first. Secondly, focus on the last 5 minutes and rehearse those last 5 minutes, especially your call to action. Remember in the KFD, what exactly do you want them to do differently? Know exactly how you're going to articulate what you want them to do differently or next when they walk out of the room, and rehearse that. That's critically important. So work on the close more. The reason number 1 and 2 are there is based on cognitive psychology research and communication studies that it's called primacy and recency. People remember most what they hear first and last. And actually, when they really dig down, people remember what you say last even more. So if you really got to slice it down, that's actually what they're going to remember the most. So what you say last is critical. And then that opening is critical. That's part of it's for the audience, and that part of that's for you, really, frankly, as I mentioned, to get into your groove, critically important, and that will make a huge difference. So let's talk about number 3. Memorize your transitions. Sorry, that's the next one. Sorry. 3 is memorize your foundational phrases. Write down foundational phrases. This is a 10-word or less point, basically, right? What's a phrase? Ideally, it might be rhythmic. Here's an example, one I used to use a lot in presentations. Invest in your future. Invest in your skills, you'll design your own future. Invest in your skill set, you'll design your own future. So that's a sticky phrase that will stick with them. I have several of my vertical lessons that some of you have heard. You'll get on belay as an example. I try to make it short as possible. That's 3 words, right? Celebrate the summits, 3 words. So for each particular point you make, try to distill it down to that key foundational phrase and say it at least once, if not multiple times during that segment, so it sticks. 10 words or less, rhythmic, sticky, foundational phrases. And know those like you cold so that you can say those out loud in rehearsal, in your room, in your mind. Say those and know exactly what that foundational phrase is. Much tighter, much stickier. And you'll be much more likely to have it for someone to remember it. So that's definitely one of the goals, right? So, okay, number three here is memorize, or number 4, sorry. So 3 is memorize your foundational phrases. Number 4 is know your transitions so you know your way through. Don't get lost, as we talked about earlier in depth. Transitions are the next one I want you to focus on and have those memorized. Georgia said, for her, she wants to have them memorized verbatim, which is great. At least have a pretty good sense. You don't have to nail every word on your transition, but for you, I want you to know your transition and remember how you're getting from point A to B, B to C, and so on. Critical. So rehearse the transitions as well. That's essential. Now, let's. I'm going to go over here to the chat real quick and look at a few items. We've got Jim says, I have acted in plays. Lines have to be precise and exact if you're to succeed. So rehearsing is at the heart of success. I could not agree more. It's not fun. I don't like to rehearse my stuff out loud, but I want to serve people and I want to be good. I want to be exceptional. I want you to be exceptional. I know you do, and I know you want to serve people at a higher level. So we have to rehearse if we want to be great. I got a question as well about how often do you do a complete rehearsal? I try to do, the ideal is I want to do 3 full rehearsals if I can. The truth is I don't always get 3 full rehearsals, especially if it's a new presentation. So often my breakouts at HDI, as an example, might be completely new material. I will rehearse them completely out loud, ideally in front of an audience, but not always. Often it's the first live time I've ever done it in front of an audience for HDI as an example. I wouldn't recommend that unless you're a full-time professional and you're speaking a lot. Try to get a situation, or at least in your bathroom, and lock yourself up in your basement or whatever, and rehearse out loud. And you don't have to have a mirror. That's the thing I got a question about as well. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of rehearsing in front of the mirror. It's kind of, for me, it's, kind of weirds me out. So I know that's a tip that you might hear out there. One of my primary mentors, who's an extraordinarily successful speaker and coach, he actually prefers, as I do, to rehearse in a quiet room by yourself with no mirror and just imagine your audience in front of you. I think it's much more powerful. You're not going to be looking at yourself in a mirror. I think it's odd. I don't think it's helpful to the psychology of what you're going to be doing in front of live people. I would rather you imagine a live audience and imagine interacting and pretending you're interacting with them in some space where there's nobody around. I get very self-conscious, and my wife's tired of listening to me anyway, so I don't really try to make her listen to me anymore. But go to your chapter, perhaps, or if you have a situation where you can rehearse live, definitely try to rehearse out loud 3 times. But I really want you to go over those. I'd rather you get like 1 live rehearsal and go over your opening and your close, your foundational phrases, and your transitions over and over, 7 times each. If you want to have a number, for those of you who are very analytical, and I have a little checkbox, 7 times each. The opening, the close, transitions, those foundational phrases, I rehearse those so that I know those ice cold, ready to rock and roll. All right. And I see a question. Let me comment over here real quick. Go back to the Q&A. I want to keep engaged there. You all have been great about being engaged. So Justin says, I break mirrors. I prefer to capture it on video. Thank you. Justin said, I prefer to capture it on video and review it back, especially that open, close, and transitions. Absolutely. Great tip. I strongly encourage you to video it. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't think to mention that. And yes, absolutely video it. And so here's the thing, right? By the way, I have videotaped and I have audio taped over 1,000 hours of my presentations, and I've listened to a significant number of those. It's usually what I do on the plane on the way out, and on the plane on the way back is I listen and I debrief and what can I do better, and what did I like best. I try not to beat myself up. I also try to be in a good emotional state when I'm listening. So I've noticed if I'm tired, When I listen back, even for me, like, not that I'm great or anything, but I do this a lot. And even I listen back sometimes like, oh, I sucked. And, it's crazy. You got to watch out for the psychology. I want you to be positive and encourage yourself. So when you're feeling pretty good, you kind of think that post euphoria going on, not when you're exhausted and you're thinking, oh, I sucked. Make sure it's in a moment when you're feeling good, to listen back to your presentation after it, especially at least audio. And what'd you like best? What would you do next time? And to Justin's point, in rehearsal, watch it and listen to it. And here's the big the big pushback I get is people say, Manley, I don't want to listen to myself. I don't want to watch myself. I don't like doing it either. But here's the deal. You're making 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, whatever. You're making them listen to you for 60 minutes, so you won't listen to yourself. You're making other people do it. You need to do it to yourself. You owe it to yourself and to your audience to listen and watch video, especially in those rehearsal moments. So great point, Justin. Thank you for bringing it up. I'm going to jump back to this question earlier to Diane, a dear friend up in Chicago. How are you doing? She says, you are very active in your presentations. Do you rehearse just the words, or do you also do the activities? Good question. So the answer is yes and yes to a point. So I do. So there's really three components of speaking that there's a lot of things I can dive into much more deeply than I have time to do today. But essentially we have structure, we have content, and we have delivery, right? So let's talk about the delivery that Diane asked about. I rehearse. I don't rehearse my style. In other words, I try to show up very transparently and I try to show up. By the way, this is what I call the authenticity gap. So off the script here today or my outline, but I want to be as authentic as possible. And what I call the authenticity gap, when I work with people in speech coaching, I have this assessment. And one of the key questions, it used to be the 13th. Now it's the first, the number one thing. How authentic do you feel like you show up? And what I mean by that is, if you think about you hanging out with your best friends, having a beer, or even if you don't drink, you're in a relaxed setting, people you've known since, let's say, grade school. These people won't judge you and you're completely comfortable with them. That's one level, right? And then I want you to think about you in front of an audience and how you feel, how you show up, how much of you shines through. The gap between those 2 points is what I call the authenticity gap. What I would encourage you to do is continually try to narrow that gap. I want you to be as similar to the way you show up in the hallway, the way you are in comfort with friends, in any social setting, be as much like that in front of the audience as possible. So to that end, I don't rehearse like how I hold up my hands. There's speech coaches who hold your hand this way. And I was just with a good friend of mine, Connie Podesta, who many of you have seen at HDI and Fusion as well. Connie's a legend and just slays it on the stage. She's amazing. I spent 2.5 days with her this past weekend, and she said somebody asked her, would you teach me how to pass the mic from hand to hand? And she said, okay, I'll show you how to do it. She goes, well, when this hand gets tired, I put it in this hand. And they're like, what? And that's it. She just switch it. Just be you, right? Just show up and be you. You don't have to rehearse. I don't rehearse movement. I am engaged. I amp up a little bit on caffeine before I get out there, and I just try to be me. So I am fairly animated. You don't have to be animated though. But I will tell you what you have to be in a moment, or what you have to show in the room. But you don't have to be animated. So I don't rehearse that. But Diane did mention something else. She said, do I rehearse the activities? Yes. This is really important, especially those of you, and those of you who have got some people on here that are professional training environment, and some people on our HDI and ICMI faculty and business partners. Yes, that you all know, do this for a living. You have to know your activity and rehearse the instructions. So if you have literally a quote unquote activity, I'm going to have them talk to each other. I'm going to have them do this. I'm going to have them, have them write this down. That's pretty simple. But definitely, if you have a real deal activity, you have to rehearse those instructions. That's critically important. So yes on activity rehearsal, yes on word rehearsal. Gestures and that little micro stuff, no. There's some advanced stuff. I do certain things in certain parts of the room for intention, but I think that's a little more, you don't need to worry about that right now. Just more than all that, just show up and be yourself as far as physical delivery. That's the most important thing I could share with you there. So hopefully that was helpful. So let's dive back in here to the outline, and I'll jump to this is my, so at the top of this previous slide, it says pre-game rituals and mindsets. Okay, this falls under pre-game rituals and mindsets. What I'm sharing here are 5 questions that I ask myself, and I try to not just ask, but I try to contemplate them deeply before I present. So this really puts me in a good frame of mind to connect with the audience and serve at the highest level possible. So these questions, you see at the bottom there in fine print, I've credited the people who gave me these questions. These were all different mentors that gave me these over the years. Part of that $50,000 of education. Y'all are like, man, you must be a slow learner. But I got these from, these people are some of the very, very best speakers on the planet, who are not just good, but their hearts are in it for the right reasons, and they have made a massive impact in the world. And these have worked for me. So the number one question is, what is my intent? What am I here to do? Okay, and this is going to help you start directing your attention and your and quieting the ego to focus on the audience. Okay, what is my intent? And my intent is to serve you when you show up. Right? Fear about how you look in front of the audience and gratitude and focus on serving the audience can't really coexist in your brain. Okay. And what I do is, if I notice the ego BS starting, like, oh, I wonder if they're going to, this is a new presentation. I hope I look good. And I hope somebody wants to hire me out of this. The way you quiet that is to refocus your intent. And here's what I say. This has a spiritual underlying thing. It doesn't have to be spiritual for you, but I have a mantra that I say to get me out of bed when I'm walking down the hall, when I'm setting up the AV, when I'm in the room beforehand, getting connected with the room and comfortable. I say, thank you for the opportunity to serve. Now, if that has an inherent, to a greater power or whatever, that may not be your thing. That's fine. But just gratitude. I'm grateful to be here to serve this audience. Okay. It can just be between you and the audience. So I keep focused. I keep saying that mantra over and over. I'm grateful to serve. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. I'm grateful to serve. That focuses me on the audience, and it quiets the ego and all that BS that goes on in our head. So what is my intent? Specifically, if you want to dive deeper, I'll share exactly what I say. I get on my knees and I just, not necessarily I'm not a religious person, but just in a grounding way. Mostly I want to check my ego, right? I'm this hotshot speaker. It's so easy to get caught in. I'm cool. I'm successful. I want you to be confident. But I get on my knees, and right before I go up, I don't know if any of y'all ever noticed that, I'll try to hide in the corner, back in the back of the room, and look at people and really connect on my knees to make sure I'm here to serve. It's just a symbolic to me that to put myself literally below the audience, I'm here to serve. And then I'm here to focus on them. The specific intent I share is this. I say, I want to be concise. Help me engage this audience with clarity. Engage their minds with clarity. The second part is help me fill their heart and let them know that I care and with love. And that's something else I'm gonna talk about in a minute. And then the third piece is I help me fill their spirit with inspiration and courage, and that they can do this. So something like that, whatever it is for you, so that for me, I want to be sharp mentally with them so they clearly hear it, know that I care, and then also inspire them to go use the information. Again, there's all the information in the world. You got to encourage them and push them to go do something with this. That's really important. We'll talk more about that too. So that's the intent piece. Number 2 question, am I present? Ask this question and try to go deep here. Ideally, I would highly encourage you to carve out some quiet time, meditation time. Tough, you're right, because you're busy. You're running around, it's morning or whatever, it's afternoon, you got to hook up your computer. But being intentional and asking that question and doing whatever it helps, if it's breathing or exercise, whatever helps you to get present. Am I present? Critical. Number 3, will I have fun? This one is really a fun one, actually, right? Will I have fun? This goes back to the whole authenticity thing. Have fun and show up and be you. Some of you have seen a good friend of mine named Tim Gard. He was at Fusion years ago. Tim is hilarious. And his foundational message that he repeats again and again and again is, I'm going to have fun and nobody is going to stop me. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to laugh at myself. I'm going to try to relax in front of the audience. And I've tested this day in and day out. I'm obsessive, and like a lot of you, keep metrics. And I would watch my evaluations day to day when I've been out hammering it like for 8 hours a day on the road doing seminars and stuff. And I noticed that the more I would just show up and be me and laugh and relax, the more fun I had, the more fun the audience had, the higher the evaluations were, and the better the people were served. So ask that question and just commit, as Tim says, to have fun. Don't let anybody stop you. And it's worth it. That's a key question. Number 4, this is powerful. This one comes from Dr. Willie Jolly, Hall of Fame speaker out of Washington, D.C. How would I give this presentation if I knew it was my last one ever? One thing I want to share right here is that since I've been using these questions for 7 years now, they can become sort of like, just you kind of read through them, you don't really go deep. So here's something I've started doing with this one is like, I actually imagine, this is whack, okay, but this is how serious I am about this. I imagine myself, so often I'll imagine having, dying on a plane crash on the way home. I know this is kind of morbid, right? But I want to think like, okay, literally, if this is like the last time I ever speak, what would I say? How would I show up? How would I deliver this presentation? Pretty deep, fairly emotional. You don't have to go there, but it does amplify the level of seriousness. This is an honor. You've got people's, 60 minutes or whatever amount of time of their life. I take it very serious, and I want you to take it serious, and I want you to show up and think, what's the one thing I might say, and how would I show up? I guarantee you this: if you really ask yourself that question, and you say, how would I give this presentation as my last one ever? You're going to show up more authentically. The more your heart's going to shine through, even if you're a guarded, emotional person, you're going to show up differently in that room. But guarantee it. That's the key. Very, very powerful. So take a few minutes and contemplate that one. Number 5. This one it's kind of a 180 spin on that previous question that my dear friend Sam Silverstein, another legendary speaker, taught me this one. How would I give this presentation if I knew someone in my audience's life depended on it? And maybe for you, they're like, I know most of you are not doing an inspirational presentation or something like that, but their life, think of it like this. Like, what if you share something valuable and you inspire them to actually take action on it? And then they go and they do it courageously. And then they actually get a raise, or it helps them alleviate some stress on their team. It puts them in a position to get home with less stress and serve their home life, their family in a more meaningful way. I know it sounds crazy, especially for like more tactical or presentations or maybe a case study or something, but don't underestimate the impact that something you might share in the room could have on somebody. So very, very powerful question. How would you give the presentation if you knew someone's audience, their life depended on the audience? Not maybe if they're going to live or die, but their quality of life even, It's a huge question, but it's really powerful. It helps you refocus. So those are the 5 questions I try to always contemplate and go through. Pre-game ritual that definitely make a difference for me to show up in a connected, meaningful way and deliver incredible value for everybody in the room. All right, we're going to fire through these pretty quickly so that we have time to wrap up strong here at the end. I'm going to check the questions as well. We'll go there. So 7 quick pre-presentation tips that these fall under the pre-game rituals. So this links back again. Number 1, be grateful for the opportunity to serve. And if you start noticing, as soon as you start noticing your ego being, maybe getting excited, I want you to be confident and proud of yourself, but you're there to serve. And the more you focus on serving, the less you're going to have any fear or any other, you're going to connect at a deeper level. Number 2, commit to having fun. There was a question to help you focus on that. Number 3, I haven't covered this at all. This is a tough one, especially if you're doing if you're a breakout right after another breakout. This is a little tricky. Connect before you communicate. I call this pre-rapport, something I learned from one of my speech coaches. And what this means is to try to shake hands and connect with people in the room before you speak. So this works great, especially if you have an after lunch or the first one in the morning. That's a real luxury. You get time to set up. And as people start filtering in, do one of 2 things or both. Number 1, go to those people in the room and say, you can, if nothing else, I thank them. I say, hey, introduce myself. Hey, hi, Susan, thanks for showing up. I really appreciate you being here. I know there's a lot of sessions you could be in. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. This helps me. It helps me as much as I think it helps them. Excuse me. It helps me connect with people. Again, it be focused on them, not me. To have time to do this effectively, again, you got to have AV knocked out. It's very tough if you're following another breakout. But if you can even shake hands with a few people in the front row, when I used to do a lot of public seminars, open enrollment, I would have up to 150 people in the room. And I would start they started at 9 a.m. on the nose. So I would start I knew about the exact amount of time for the amount of people. I would start at about 5 to 10 minutes before in the very back of the room. And I would go through and shake every single person's hand and introduce myself to every person in the room from the back of the audience all the way to the front. And when I got to the front, it was on. Pre-rapport. It's incredibly powerful. Highly encourage you. Even if you're an introvert, it's even more important actually to connect with a few people and just thank them for being there. The second thing you can do is ask them, why did you pick this breakout? What are you hoping to get out of this presentation? That will help you get a re-anchor to exactly what they're wanting and focused on. So that is very powerful as well. Connect before you communicate. So do that if you can. It's very harder in a keynote situation, obviously, or bigger rooms, but in most breakouts and most presentations, I think you can do it more than you might be doing it. So number 4, confirm your AV 12 hours in advance. What I try to always do is get into the room the day before, ideally, and I hook my computer up when nobody's in there, and I make sure that it works, and I check the mic and do all that, whether it's 2 people or 2,000, I try to do an AV check before. That's critical. And then you're going to know exactly what the routine is when you get ready to go that next morning. As you all know, and if you've spoken before, the AV is always a little squirrely. You never know, right? So do that. Set yourself up for success. Next one, number 5, experience your environment in advance. This is the other thing I do that when I'm in that room ahead of time is I walk around the room and I hang out I try to hang out for 10 or 20 minutes. I'll go up to the front of the room and close my eyes, and sometimes I'll say my opening lines out loud or my closing lines. I'll try to close my eyes and imagine being there the next day in the room filled and people smiling, having fun, people thanking me afterwards and having that meaningful connection in the room. I try to experience the environment and how it's going to be. Another thing I do is I go to the very back corners of the room and I look up to the front and imagine me being up there and what that feels like. You try to just breathe and hang out in the room. This is very powerful. I know it may sound a little weird to some of you, but it makes a huge difference. Because here's what it is. The next day when you come in there, you got AV knocked out, or at least you know it worked before, and your brain, your subconscious is primed to, it feels a little bit more familiar than it would. So everything you can do to stack everything in your favor, the more likely you are to get up there and crush it for everyone in the room. So invest some energy in the pre getting connected with the environment of the room. 6, I already mentioned this actually, visualizing your success. Very powerful and very important. Number 7, something I do that I try to always do as my breakout. The first thing I do, and I hook up my AV before my breakout, is I get some music playing. And I don't know if you all have noticed that. I've occasionally, messed that up and not got it hooked up, but I try to get some music going right away. It relaxes me. It really sets a different vibe in the room and environment. People are more comfortable. It's like cheating almost. I mean, you can flip the switch on the emotions and the environment and connect people and relax them so much more effectively with music, more than anything you could say. So use that to your advantage. Put some fun music, upbeat or something relaxing, whatever you want to put on. It's your show. And no profanity though, right? Obviously, hopefully that's obvious. I had a full in Las Vegas, had a huge keynote in Vegas. This AV guy was playing some foul rap music. Anyway, that me and the event director had to go over and tell him to turn it off. So shouldn't have to tell you that. Shouldn't have to tell a professional AV person in Las Vegas to that, right? But obviously, good stuff, upbeat, whatever. Just family friendly, right? Obvious. Okay, cool. So we got 2 more minutes, so I got a great strong close for you. I'm going to jump over to the questions real quick and make sure there's, if I've missed any, I promise I'll come back. We can connect offline. Georgia said she understands the foundational phrases better now. Great. Oh, yes, it is to summarize. It's to she asked, wanted to clarify the purpose of the foundational phrase is to anchor that particular message or module or point in a sticky, powerful way. It's like a key summary of your point, but it's got to be tight, 10 words or less, rhythmic, and as concise as possible. I think that's the only other question I had there, a comment that was unanswered right now. So, okay, here, I'm going to do it right here. Here's the thank you, right? Didn't do it at the very beginning. Thank you. I'm grateful. I am really grateful for you all being here with me on this virtual presentation. So thanks for showing up, and please connect with me on the internet. Call me. You all know my website, verticallessons.com. My cell phone is at the top of every single page, and call me, text me, Facebook, LinkedIn. I look forward to serving you. I'm going to tell you the last key thing I'm going to share with you, and then I have one quick little story I'm going to share with you. So I might go 1 minute over, perhaps. Here it goes. So here's the most important thing I want you to remember. So the most important thing I want you to focus on is this point that I had up. That said, I said the most critical success factor that a world famous 7-figure speaker paid $50,000 to learn. True story. I'm not going to mention the name of either speaker, but most of you probably haven't heard of the guy who got paid 50 grand. The 7-figure speaker is extremely well known worldwide, but this speaker was paid $50,000 to come and see this person live, and the 7-figure speaker paid this other speaker to come because their engagement with their audience had dropped off. They weren't having the people take action on their material like they had previously. They weren't having more people ask them to come speak. And the person went to see them speak. And of course, the speaker was great, right? Super dynamic, super powerful, great visuals, great content. Here was what was missing. And here's what I want you to focus on. This is more important than anything else as far as worrying about whatever. You got to let the audience know, and they've got to feel it, how much you care, that they get what you're saying and talking about, the information. And I don't mean in a sappy way, but I mean just that you care about this, that they get the information, that they understand it, that you care, that they take it and they go do something with it, that it helps them in a meaningful way, whether it's ITIL, something tactical, sales training tips, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter how tactical or how strategic. It's critically important that your audience gets a sense of how much you care, that they get the information, that they go use the information, and that their life is a little bit better than when they first met you. That's it. Make sure that you are focused on somehow expressing that they know you care. How you do that is up to you. Some of you are very emotive and social. That might be very comfortable. Some of you are more introverted. That's okay too. But just let them know you care in some way that's meaningful and intentional and authentic. Meaningful, intentional, authentic, that you care. Best example I have of this, and this is the moment that I want for all of you. Here's what I want you to imagine, okay? You do a session at a conference coming up, right? This happened to me in 2012. I did this session in April, right? It was a seminar. Fast forward, you run into this person in a future conference, okay? For me, it was September of that year. I did another seminar in San Antonio, Texas, and this gal walks up to me. She gets super fired up. I could see her face when she walked in the room. Imagine this person coming up to you in the hallway at some future conference and looking at you and saying, as this gal to me did, she said, "Do you remember me?" You probably don't. My name is Deborah. And I said, "Deborah, I remember your face. I didn't remember your name." And she said, "Manley, I want to share something with you." She said, "I was in the back taking notes in your session all day, and it was incredibly, good content. But you know what? I want you to know that I actually took action on a few items." And she said 3 things. She said, "Number 1, I got a promotion. I was struggling in my life when I saw you in that session, that seminar that day, and you didn't know that, but I was really in a rough spot. I got a promotion, I got a raise, and she said, most importantly, my life is better than when I met you." That's what I want for you. I want you to imagine running into someone in your audience at a future conference, or them calling you up, or them sending you an email, and them sharing with you that their life is just a little bit better because you shared something with them, because you showed up and you let them know that you care, that they go do something with the information. And that, my friends, makes it worth it. Thank you for showing up today. I look forward to staying in touch with you all, and stay in touch. See you soon, hopefully, and reach out to me if there's anything you need clarity on, you have a question, email, whatever works for you. I can't wait to support you. on belay, and go out there and make a difference with your speaking. It's worth it. Thank you.